electricity production online. And so those plans were out there. When the most recent assessment with the energy conservation facilities and so forth that are out there right now, they've gone from growth, considering flat, to be good. There's a flat demand right now. So they have excess capacity. And to his point, some of that capacity does have to be shut down, and it's usually based on the age of the plant and how much it puts out in relation to where it is on the grid. There's a complicated formula for that, and we don't need to do that. The however that follows that, TVA, with the last administration and the war on coal, made a decision to shut down a lot of coal-fired plants and replace them with natural gas turbines. And that process is somewhat like a big train rolling down the tracks. Once it develops momentum, it's awfully expensive and difficult to stop. The Bull Run plant and some of these others may have been economically viable for another 10 to 20 years, except for the decision that was made 10 years ago to get more gas-fired plants online. Long discussion on that as to whether or not that's a good decision or not, especially considering that we're a coal-producing state. But all that to say this, the TVA made that decision, and like I said, the state cannot reach, we're powerless to reach into their decision-making process. And as he pointed out, there's a lot of factors that go into that. And TVA, I can say a lot of bad things about them, but one of the good things I can say about them is they are extremely sensitive to the rates the customer has to pay. That was not an advertisement for TVA.
I have another question on sanctuary cities, and there are some areas in the state that are kind of no-go zones. What are we doing about those?
So was it last year we passed legislation? Last year we passed legislation banning sanctuary cities. That ain't gonna happen here. Period.
Any other questions?
Let me name a city in particular you might have been concerned with. It's called Nashville. Yes, and that bill went through with a great deal of support.
Okay.
The mayor also went away too.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. My name is Frank Harlock. I'm from Greenville, Tennessee. I thank the gentleman at the beginning of the meeting with those remarks about Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. It was the states that formed the federal government. The federal government didn't form the states. And one of the things we had, we were supporting here, and the Supreme Court made that unconstitutional decision of June of 2015 on same-sex marriage. Not only did they violate their oath of office, but they violated the Tennessee Constitution. It says marriage can only be between a man and a woman here in Tennessee, and that's in law. And, and here it is. I want to read it for you right now. It says, Tennessee Constitution, Article 11, Section 18 of 2006. Just take a minute to read it. The historical institution and legal contract solemnizing the relationship of one man and one woman shall be the only legally recognized marital contract in the state. Any policy or law or judicial interpretation purporting to define marriage as anything other than the historical institution and legal contract between one man and one woman is contrary to the public policy of this state and shall be void and unenforceable in Tennessee. If another state or foreign jurisdiction issues a license for persons to marry, and if such marriage is prohibited in the state by the provisions of this section, the marriage shall be void and unenforceable in this state. We have 95 counties in Tennessee. We have county clerks in Tennessee issuing same-sex marriage license in violation of their oath of office. Also, Mark Pody, on January the 20th, 2016, had his bill before the Civil Justice Subcommittee, which would nullify the unconstitutional Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage. The vote was 4-1. There was 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. That kept it going to the other committees to eventually to the House floor for a vote. So I think that people, when they take an oath of office in the state of Tennessee or any other state, that oath means something. It means something. When you take that oath to uphold the U.S. and the Tennessee Constitution, that must be done. And it's not being done. And this Republicans in the state of Tennessee have a supermajority in the House and Senate and Republican governor when this happened. the Supreme Court cannot make law. That was an opinion, not law. Same thing they did with taking prayer out of school, abortion, and same-sex marriage. Here it is in law, and I appreciate the remarks on Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. God bless you. Thank you.
Let me add a comment on that. There is a bona fide conflict. I agree with you. I voted for that, by the way, back when it first went in. But I have to point out to you there's another section of the U.S. Constitution called full faith and credit. And essentially what that says is each state must give full faith and credit to the acts of other states. And so we have a conflict between our state constitution and the Full Faith and Credit Act. That was first tested, I believe, in Knoxville, as a matter of fact, when two people came from another state, same-sex married, and attempted to get a divorce. And that, of course, raised the issue for our state. There's a lot of people that have considered that to be a settlement, that the Supreme Court decision is invalidated that portion of our state constitution. But there are those of us who, and I count myself as one, who are waiting for a strong case to bring up to challenge that. As of this point in time, I haven't seen one, and I do not know of one in this state. Now, there's some other states that maybe have attempted that, but they have not gotten past, to my knowledge, the first appellate level of federal courts.
Sir, a violation is a violation of the oath of office. We have a constitution, it's a written document.
We have two constitutions, and we swear to support them both, which is why I said the U.S. Constitution has the full faith and credit clause.
Yeah, but nowhere in the United States Constitution do they have the authority, no involvement in marriage whatsoever. That's left up to the states.
Again, I'm not going to quarrel with you. I'm just saying that the oath that you
Not
asked.
quarreling with state facts.
The oath that you pointed out, though, when we're sworn in, we swear an oath to both constitutions. And where there is a conflict, as in the case you mentioned, the full faith and credit clause versus the same-sex marriage, that conflict is supposedly resolved in the courts.
Sir, I apologize, but we need to do the same thing Alabama did. I was hoping that Tennessee would lead west ahead of Alabama, but they got to it before we did. And I hope that we can follow after the results of Alabama. Thank you.
Got another question here?
Good evening, thanks for being here. Laura Baker with the Tennessee Star. My questions were for Lieutenant Governor. What do you need to see in a heartbeat bill or similar, basically some ban on abortions with scientific proof behind it? What do you need to see in that bill for it to pass through the Senate?
Well, we had the trigger bill, which was supported by the Tennessee Right to Life, and it passed overwhelmingly in the Senate, and I believe also in the House. And the heartbeat bill, I think it's still at a stage where it would end up being challenged. There are a number of other states that are doing it, and if they lose, guess who gets their attorneys paid for it? Planned Parenthood or ACLU. And I think that it's prudent for us to wait and see what happens and not help ACLU or Planned Parenthood with their funding. We'll have hearings on it during the summer. It is not dead. It'll be back, with us in the winter session.
And so you expect it will pass through then, and we'll get enough work done during that summer study so that it can pass next year?
I'm hopeful that, that all the issues will be addressed and that some of the cases will have proceeded far enough up in the courts where we can look at what is passing and what would, be constitutional.
Got one more question here?
John, you mentioned full faith and credit. So if a state passes a law, another state can't necessarily repeal that law if the people go to a different state. Is that kind of correct?
Well, let me give you a scenario when you have those conflicts, and they exist multiple times. When those conflicts develop, the courts are delegated the responsibility of resolving the conflict. And we may not agree with the resolution they've reached, and I can truthfully say that. I know one gentleman in the room that agrees with me that that wasn't the correct resolution. But I raised my hand and I swore an oath to support the U.S. Constitution as well as the Tennessee Constitution. In that realm, I'm bound to accept the U.S. Supreme Court's resolution, whether I agree with it or not.
Well, you know, I'm thinking about my carry permit. You know, why should I worry about what state I'm in with my carry permit?
Well, in Tennessee and 26 other states, you don't have to because we have reciprocal agreements. In most of those cases, for example, when Tennessee lowered the age from 21 to 18, several of the states that we had reciprocal agreements with rescinded that part of the agreement. Again, disagreement, but that full faith and credit piece, and we could take that to court and probably win it. In the long run, it would cost us more than we would get out of it. Again, to the governor's point about bearing the legal cost. As a state, as someone else has pointed out, and I want to congratulate my colleagues here on the fiscal responsibility our state has demonstrated. But part of that is if we're going to go to court and pay a lot of money to fight these court cases, we need to be reasonably sure we got a good chance at winning them.
Got one more question here, and we'll end it with this one.
I'm Terrence Craig from Greene County, and I have a question to both of you gentlemen that are speaking. Am I right in assuming you're talking about a law when you're talking about abortion?
Okay, are you talking about bills that we have carried, or?
Well, I think the Lieutenant Governor spoke of a law earlier.
Pull the mic up so everybody can hear you.
The Lieutenant Governor spoke of law earlier, then you spoke about the law that the federal government has on abortion overriding the law that the state of Tennessee has on abortion. What law does the federal government have on abortion?
I don't think it's a law. I think it's mostly court cases that they've had. The first being Roe v. Wade, and then that decision was modified with Casey, and I don't know who the other party was.
What about
states did have anti-abortion laws, and when Roe v. Wade came along, it wiped them all out.
what about Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution?
Well, what do you mean, what about?
It's a limitation of the federal government's authority.
Right.
And abortion, health care, privacy is not in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. And then the Supreme Court in 2013 passed a law, passed an opinion that said the federal government had no business in marriage. And then in 2015, the same Supreme Court dictated that you had to marry people of the same sex, and that's not a law either. In the case of abortion, it was done in 1973, abortion is not in Article 1, Section 8, and neither is the privacy of a woman in that article, and neither is health care of a woman in that article. So the federal government does not have a law on abortion. It has an unconstitutional opinion from the Supreme Court.
Amen.
Because the Supreme Court has no authority over abortion. It's not a federal issue. It's a state issue. And I don't understand why anyone would think that the opinion of the Supreme Court can do away with the Constitution of the state of Tennessee and the laws of the state of Tennessee when the federal government does not have jurisdiction over that.
I agree.
Well, that goes way back to the Civil War and the ability of the states to secede from the Union. If you look at the decisions of the court back then, they more or less said that in order to keep the country united, that the federal Constitution took precedence. Whether you agree with it or not, I think what you're going to see...
I beg your pardon. the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land.
Right.
And it took precedence over everything when it was ordained and established by the people of the United States of America. Had nothing to do with the Civil War.
Well, it was actually ordained by the states.
No, sir.
It was the states that passed the Articles of Confederation.
No,
And
sir.
then later,
No, sir. No, sir. They had special conventions done by the people. The states did not endorse and establish the Constitution. The people of the various states did.
well, we can argue that, but I think one way that you change that is that you elect Republican legislators and make sure you get judges who look at the Constitution not as a fluid document, but look at it as what was intended to be in the written word of it. You know, we can argue the Constitution all, you know.
You can't argue the Constitution. It's plain
Well, we
words,
could-
all you have to read it.
Well, it does have to be interpreted, and
No, it
in the
doesn't. The words
Constitution,
speak for themselves. There's
Well-
no need for interpretation.
well, then there's no need for the Supreme Court.
Well, we've gone on with this argument for a long time. I want to thank all of you for coming and letting us understand this. Yes, go ahead.
If anybody would like weekly newsletters while we're in session, if you'll call my office or email me, I got some cards here. I'll be glad to send you that. We usually do it in January, so when we end session, and send that on Friday afternoons. And also, I'm on Facebook. I usually post a lot of updates on Facebook if you want to add me. But it's truly an honor to be here with y'all tonight, and I promise you this, I work hard for you each and every day. And I'll never take this office for granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord.
I've got a couple more announcements to make before we leave. Don't forget about all the veterans. Pancake breakfast this coming weekend, Christ our Savior Church. That's on Highway 72, just past Tellico Village. Also, the Reverend Godfrey Self is going to be speaking there, and he's going to be talking about religious liberty, and it's going to be quite something. It'll be about a 4-hour session there with lunch provided. So pick up a brochure on either one of these that are on the desk, or come see me. Also, Act for America meeting is going to be on this Thursday, May the 23rd, and they'd like to have your people come to that. I never had it, but thank you very much for coming. Thank you for your donation. And we have Glenn Jacobs, the mayor of Knox County, going to be here for the next meeting. Also, make sure that you clear your bill up with the waitress and waiters. Be sure to clear up your bill, because if you don't, keep going, you have to pay for it.
Thank you.
Okay, sweetie. See you later. Thank you. I know. All right, solo shot.